Hello again, friends. And you are our friends. Good morning to you, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru right here, wherever it is that you have pulled up to, where we're going to be answering your questions and more that are sent in to cornydrivethru@gmail.com or using the hashtag cornydrivethru on Twitter. I'm going to say it at the top of the show for everyone who says, how do I submit questions? I still don't know how people don't know how to do this. But without any further ado, I am your host, the great Brian Last, and the man who I'm going to be asking your questions to is the leader of the Cult of Cornette, one of the most popular figures in professional wrestling today, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Hello, Brian.
What is that, your Sue the Shooter voice?
Hello, Brian. I'm just here to do the show. I don't want to offend anyone. I'm afraid that I should say something wrong and someone should take offense and their butts would hurt. So I just want to be polite, sir. Thank you, sir. Please, sir, may I have another? I don't want to cause any trouble. I'll just be over in the corner. Everyone else can speak.
Well, this has the makings of a very interesting drive-thru. Of course, you are a little bit controversial at this very moment. But
well, you know, Brian, I'll tell you what it cures hoarseness. It cures the most nagging cases of hoarseness, ladies and gentlemen. Ah, yes. You know, I'm reminded more of why my new motto in life is the old Steve Allen line. He says, guy asked him, said, do they get your program in Cleveland? He said, well, they watch it, but I'm not sure they get it. I'm so flummoxed and befuzzled and bewildered at the people in the world that just don't get it. But, you know, I want to try not to alienate anyone here on the program or make them feel uncomfortable or violate their spaces or whatever. But as an update on what we talked about on the Experience last week, I said they're trying to ban Jim Cornette from polite society. They're out there on Twitter because I don't know why. I drew the comparison between the 14-year-old teenage girls that used to send me the death threats when we would hit Ricky Morton over the head with the racket on TV. And 35 years later, these are supposedly people that are supposedly smart, that all wrestling is just phony and silly. But when I insult their favorite wrestlers, oh my God, their heads become on fire. And when I tell them that their favorite wrestler is silly or stupid, my God, there are real problems in the world, ladies and gentlemen, but they explode. And then it's so easy then. And, you know, now I'm understanding there's some things about modern society in general by watching the modern group of wrestling fans. Instead of the mature, dignified, cultured, cognizant, with it group that comprises the majority of the Cult of Cornette audience here, modern society in general and some of the modern wrestling fans are reminding me of each other because there are real things going on in the world, but they don't see it because they believe what they read on the internet. And so therefore, that is how they choose their crusades, because of what they read on the internet. And I mentioned how that now they were just screaming at me because I was encouraging suicide, and I had told a guy to kill himself. And I mentioned to you, we told the story. It was the time I reviewed the match. I said, boy, look at that ring announcer. The way he was dressed, they ought to take him out and hang him in a parking lot. And a year later, it's because, oh my God, he told the guy to kill himself. Now, I mentioned they, and then hung in the parking lot, et cetera, et cetera. I'm mocking suicide. So I want to make this clear at the top of the program. I have not ever seriously considered public hanging of any kind as a penalty for dressing badly. I just want to clear that up right now for the folks who were unsure on that. And as well, I believe this past week on the Experience, I mentioned that when I've said that Kenny Omega, for wrestling a blow-up sex toy at a competitive match in public, ought to be boiled in oil and have his fat sold for soap, I mentioned that even if somebody did have him hanging over the boiling oil and there was a rendering machine there and there was a soap factory we'd already made a deal with, that at worst, and I wouldn't get in trouble, that at worst I would probably say, I'll let him down and break a few of his fingers so he can't do the jazz hands. I mentioned that because exaggeration for effect is something that is actually in my vocabulary and in my cognizance, and I don't just act like that I'm hearing Klaatu Barada Nikto from a space alien when I think of those concepts. As a matter of fact, most of the time when I extrapolate a penalty for the various stupid, silly, annoying goofs that piss me off, such as the cosplay wrestlers and the Republicans, while I do wish ill upon them because they are negatively affecting either me or my profession or my life in general in the case of the politicians, I don't know if I would go so far as to gut all of them with rusty fishing knives, because actually there are a few exceptions. Shit stain, the people who eat dogs in South Korea, if I could get away with it, bad shit might happen. However, for the most part, I don't even know, Brian. If somebody had Mitch McConnell held down in front of me, I don't know if I could find or know where to get a rusty fishing knife. So
the lake?
Well, I'm not going to jump in a goddamn lake and just start mucking around trying to find a rusty fishing knife. I got better things to do with my time. I don't care anymore. Oh, no, I don't care anymore. I don't care what you say. I never did believe you much anyway. I don't care anymore, so get out of my fucking way. Let me by. I got better things to do with my time. Anyway, where was I going with this? So anyway, and then here's another thing. If I am not allowed to say one of my favorite expressions, or should I be allowed to say it? You can drop dead or you can blow me. Now, I'm not just encouraging death. There is an option. I always say you have the option. You can either drop dead or blow me. But now is that somehow, because once again, I'm encouraging them to do the other, because it'd probably be better for both of us if they blew me than drop dead. So I don't know where the line is here. But the point is, so I get a call a couple days ago from the poor beleaguered National Wrestling Alliance executive, David Lagana. And he says, did you tell somebody to kill himself? I said, no. He said, did you make fun of suicide? I said, no. He said, well, why are all of these people saying you are? I said, because the same reason that Trump is president. They believe what they read on the internet. And he said, well, Jim, that's very serious. I said, I'm aware of that. I said, we just had an issue where one of our listeners and a customer of mine at Cornette's Collectibles and somebody I've got to know, and we read the letter on the air, had that issue. And he said, well, we can't joke about it. I said, that's why I don't. And he said, so you give me your word of honor that you will neither encourage anybody to commit suicide nor joke about suicide. I said, yes, David, you have my word of honor. I will continue not to do that. And I realize now that this is why that the guy went to the fucking pizza place in Jersey with the fucking gun to free the children that were being held in the pedophile ring by Hillary Clinton in the basement next to the fucking frozen pizza dough. Because either they can't get it when they hear it, or they read it and want it to be true because of that bad person. So, as a matter of fact, we have, and I want to play the tape to show people, although this audience already knows, and the ones I'm trying to preach to ain't going to get it. But from a few weeks ago on The Experience, we had a letter from a listener, as I said, and we read that. And I want to talk to you about what kind of feedback we got from it but let's play that just real briefly, and then we'll come back. And I wanted to start off with one thing, and I didn't even tell you about this beforehand because I wasn't sure I wanted to do it because I didn't want people to think I was in some way I'm reading this to put myself over. But I wanted to read this letter that I just got. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but I've recognized his name because he not only has an unusual address, because he's in a service. So he's got one of the APO addresses, and then they forward the mail. But also, I remember his last name is familiar to me because of people I've known. And he's bought a number of things at Cornette's Collectibles. And I've said I have gotten to meet a bunch of the customers at these fan fests and everything. But this guy, I have not met yet, but I recognize his name. And he had just ordered a book, The Behind the Curtain. And I just sent it out to him. And then I go to the post office yesterday, and there's a letter in the box from him. And I'm like, well, I didn't know what that would be. And I open it up, and before I see anything, there's a thank you card that says thank you. And there's not only a gift card for Carrabba's in there, but also one for Petco for Harley Quinn, which was, and so but then I read the note, and I'm going to read, and I'm not going to read his name, but I'm going to read you most of the note. Dear Jim, I just wanted to reach out and say thank you. I'm enclosing a gift card to Carrabba's because, as illustrated by your birthday meal, it's good stuff. I'm also closing a gift card for Harley Quinn. I'm sure this doesn't ring a bell, but with the millions of members of the cult, but I'm so-and-so, the guy stationed in so-and-so who orders stuff from Cornette's Collectibles and listens to both podcasts every week, even in where he is. I want to thank you for providing my family so much joy as poor kids growing up in HUD housing. That's housing and urban development, not the greatest place in the world to live in some instances for the international audience. In HUD housing, we would look forward to 6:05 Eastern every week to watch you in the midnights. I was lucky and made it out of there. I've served my country for over 25 years, have a college education, a family, and I'm not a gun nut or a Republican. But my brother never left. We still bonded by talking about the experience and drive-through each week. I surprised him with a signed hard copy of Behind the Curtain, and he loved it. I just got mine today because his went overseas. Unfortunately, I come to you with a heavy heart. My brother had demons, and on Monday, the 1st of October, I got the phone call that we all dread. My brother was found dead, having taken his own life. I searched for answers and am left with a huge hole in my heart and a void. We both got so much joy talking about old wrestling and about your two shows. Again, thank you for providing him some light in the darkness. I now don't have a buddy to talk old wrestling with, and it hurts so bad. And then he gives his contact information, which I'm not going to give, and he signs it a proud cult member. And when I got that, I was just like, fuck. His brother just died, and he just sent me gift cards thanking me for what I had been able to do or had done for them, which just, I don't even know what to say otherwise. And it's, sometimes we say, we do this fucking show every week or whatever the fuck, and I will put it up on YouTube. But this is proof that a lot of people not only take what we're doing seriously, but enjoy it. And it's a way for them to be involved with other people they like to be around or members of their family or whatever. But I couldn't believe it. I wanted to tell this guy on the air that I appreciate what he said, and I'm still dumbfounded and honored or whatever and speechless that I would get and Harley would get a gift card just for what we were able to do for them in this particular point in time, because this is recent. It's just like now that this happened. So I want to say, we must do a real good show, but I think maybe that's the thing. Everybody knows we don't do a show because fucking hell, God knows if we were trying to do a show, we'd actually try harder and put more bells and whistles into it. This is just a conversation, which is, and we don't bullshit people for the sake of the sponsors or whatever. So maybe people kind of take what we do a little bit more seriously and a little bit more legitimately. I don't know. So after that, we actually got emails from folks saying, hey, I'll be the guy to talk wrestling with him. And I had a similar situation happen. And I don't even know if he wants me to mention his name, but there's a longtime Cult of Cornette member, gets bruised occasionally, that had something similar happen where he lost somebody. And, you know, we treat serious, real things seriously and real. When it's a real situation, we don't joke about it. When some clown is out in a fucking wrestling match somewhere with a goofy outfit or doing silly shit, I'm going to talk about it. Because that's my profession. I'm an expert, and it pisses me off. But we don't make fun of people who have real life situations. We express sympathy for them because it's real. And the only thing I didn't do when we read that letter, I should have given the suicide prevention hotline number, which I didn't know what it was at the time and didn't think about it, but it is 1-800-273-8255. And Stacy even looked that up for me and said, this is something you, and I said, no, Lagana beat you to it, right? But if people, instead of acting like teenage girls with a crush on their favorite wrestler and saying old man bad, because I point out that your silly wrestlers are silly and you send me hate mail with misspelled words just like 35 years ago, and you try to concoct all this shit up, or you can't handle my comments, and you can't separate whatever the fuck it is in your brain you can't separate that allows you not to have any common sense, then if you really want to help an issue, instead of getting on Twitter and arguing with the same 17 people for 3 hours on how horrible I am because I hate women, because I quote Andy Kaufman, or I hate gay people because I think Sonny Kiss was fucking stupid, or I hate somebody else because your favorite wrestler is a clown, why don't you go out and address the issues? Why don't you vote for or campaign for or contribute to better mental health care so that people who may feel suicidal can get some help? Because any kind of health care in this country would be a bonus, would be a plus. Why don't you campaign for, spend your energy on, advocate for, contribute to stricter gun control in all forms and facets, background checks, the type of guns, the amount of guns, whatever, because obviously most suicides in the United States are by a gun, as well as most homicides. So you could do a good in a variety of fronts. Why don't you campaign for, I don't know, are there no sick children left in the world? Are there no diseases left to cure? God, Brian, what was the last figure that the Cult of Cornette members, that these fucking butthurt fucking pussy needs powder and simpering fucking social justice warriors, is that what they call them, the SJWs?
I believe so.
How much money has every other wrestling podcast, because I'd mentioned on Twitter a few weeks ago, maybe even not that long ago, I said everybody that doesn't like me either has a picture of their favorite wrestler on their page, has a podcast with 6 listeners. Actually, I forget. Oh, is a former or current pro wrestler that nobody has ever heard of. How much money have they raised for charity in the last 2 years alone? The Cult of Cornette that they despise because we say all these things about their favorite wrestlers, and Cornette's people are just mindless trolls that repeat his nonsense. All of us together have raised between the American Cancer Society and Crusade for Children in the last 2 calendar years, either raised or donated or been responsible for the groups for us, such as Jacked Up Jeremy doing that $5,000 in Charlotte alone, about $20,000 for charity.
And actually, if you want to increase it a little bit, it's a little bit different, but professional wrestler Jerry Gray, who's been battling for his life and he's right now in the hospital, listeners of this show in the 605 have raised just under $35,000 for him.
Good Lord. Well, and there you, okay, so what's the toll and the tally on the other podcasts and the other wrestling social justice warriors and the other old man bad, get rid of him group.
I couldn't tell you that. My algorithms can give me everyone else's stats, not how much money they give the charity.
Yeah, well, your algorithms. I got one of those one time at that Oriental massage place, and my fucking hip hurt for a week. But anyway, and the internet has become what they used to call it, the telephone game, where when you were kids, you'd whisper a story or a line or something to somebody and then pass it on, and they'd do the next. And by the time it got all the way around 15 people, you don't know what the fuck it was, right? They're playing telephone on the internet. They'll, oh, Jim Cornette made fun of, goddamn zebras. How dare he? And then the zebra lobby comes after me. So, you can keep doing this on the internet, or, you can actually do something worthwhile and valuable with your time instead of getting your fucking feelings hurt all the time about shit just because you don't like somebody. Now I know how Trump suckered America, because suckers like you are out there. If these people were all peace and love and a box of fluffy ducks about all wrestling should thrive and everyone should participate.
If you don't like something, don't say anything.
But we should pull for all. I get to say something about wrestling I don't like because I'm the fucking expert. I'm not out here talking about agriculture.
No, root for everyone. Root for everyone.
Yeah, but if you root for, okay, then root for the NWA. These fucking 14 assholes on the internet want the NWA to kick me off the program and penalize them by not having me on their show. Like, honestly to God, it's a fun show and I love these folks and it's my traditional wrestling, but it would hurt my feelings not to have to leave the castle in freezing ass December and spend 5 days in Atlanta the week before Christmas. Maybe we ought to start that hashtag. Hashtag cancel Cornette till spring. Because it's fucking cold, this fucking weather. Anyway, if you don't get me, Cleveland, don't fucking listen. But anyway, I do apologize, and I will continue to modify my behavior.
Dave Meltzer has an expression, reading is your friend. In some of these cases, listening is your friend. Listen to what he actually says versus seeing a tweet and running with it and taking it out of context.
And you can listen to us not only here on the program, even if you get whether you get the program or not, you can listen to it, or on YouTube, where we are also massively popular. And for fuck's sake, and just goddamn somebody get some fucking priorities, address some real issues. And old man bad, he hates my red. Oh, poor Jelly. You know what I ought to do, Brian?
No.
I ought to sue some of these people on the internet for slander, for saying all these untruths about me. As a matter of fact, after he finishes with the current little Mud Show matter with the Mud Show boys, I may get Stephen P. New right on that.
Call Stephen P. New. Show or two. Still to the rest.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Not only is Stephen P. New a loyal litigator and consigliere of the cult of Cornette, but also he is starting a new jazz band. Did you hear about this? Did you hear about this, Brian?
I did not hear about this. No.
It's going to be Stephen P. Jazz Hands New and the Jelly Crew. And he's getting guys from their mother's basement all across the country, the finest basement dwellers that are going to do a little picking and a little grinning in this jazz combo that he's putting together. And I think when Jelly Janela flunks out of wrestling, he's going to have him play the washboard, because that's basically what Jelly will be doing, is taking in washing. But anyway, Stephen P. New, ladies and gentlemen, the consigliere of the cult of Cornette, the baron of the barristers, the lord of the legal eagles, can bring the hammer of justice down on your side, the side of truth, justice, and the American way, if you call him at 888-692-8084 or Visit him online at newlawoffice.com. That's N-E-W lawoffice.com. Of course, he was front row. And did you see on Twitter, they were in Charleston, West Virginia, the scene of many a great wrestling match. It's too bad none broke out that night. JR actually said, if we're not careful in one of the matches, if we're not careful, a wrestling match is going to break out here. That was an actual quote. But right as Kenny Olivier jumped in and struck his pose right before he said, "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well, Horatio." A man, right before he said that, he did his jazz hands, and Stephen P. New was directly. I have asked television crews to get a shot like this on purpose, even in big budget productions on numerous occasions, and none of them have ever been this perfect. Stephen was right behind him, and their hands actually met. You couldn't tell because the sense of depth, but their jazz hands actually met on camera. It was a touching moment, and it was perfect. I can't believe it. So anyway, Olivier couldn't have positioned himself in a better place. I guess I got to take it back about him. I said all of his basics and his fundamentals and even his ring positioning was crummy. He was right in the right place to showcase the law offices of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. If you would like to get your money back because you bought a ticket to a wrestling match that night in Charleston and you feel taken advantage of, or if you would like to get any compensation or recompense or rectification or justification for any wrong that has been done you, and you seek legal recourse, this is the man that can help you out, that can put you in the right direction, that can put you on the road to recovery. And as I've said many times, if he can't get your ass paid, your ass does not accept cash, ladies and gentlemen. Stephen P. New, Stephen P. New, Stephen P. New, Stephen P. New.
888-692-8084. That should have probably been in the song at some point, but we can say it right here.
Well, that would be hard to 888-888.
Well, not like that.
692-8084. 888-888.
We've now done this a couple times, the Stephen P. New one, and of course the previous one that Rocky the Ramon did, the Jim Cornette one. I've heard from countless people who say they cannot watch World Class now without hearing that as they watch the introduction or the commercial breaks.
I'm glad that we can enhance their enjoyment of those fine programs. All right, I've got an update here from a previous letter that we read here on the I'm pretty sure this was on the drive-through a couple weeks ago. I'm pretty sure the letter about the attic insulation.
Oh yes, the Arnwarn.
Arnwarn, yes, was on the drive-through. So we're showing some continuity here on the programming. A letter from Lizzie, we read a couple weeks ago. Her boyfriend, Aaron Warren, who goes by the name Arn Warren in the music business, had dumped her because she kept browbeating him to insulate the attic. And this had become a big issue, and she was hoping to get him back because she still loved him. It was kind of like a Casey Kasem long-distance dedication without the dead dog. And I'm proud and pleased, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you at this point, I've got an update, another letter from Lizzie. And I love it when we can play a part in helping people in their lives and their personal matters. Dear Mr. Cornette, Lizzie says, thank you ever so much. He listened to your podcast radio thing, and Arn Warren, is going to insulate the attic, and now I'm back as his girlfriend, smiley face.
Oh, my God.
I hope he'll have more than a good 15 minutes from now on, and that I won't be barefoot begging for Subways anytime in the future. That was a remark based on what we had said. Anyway, we were kind of hard on Arn Warren. We really were. That attic is going to keep the house warmer, and soon. When it snows, the snow doesn't stay on as the heat hits the roof and warms it so the snow melts, which is always a sign of a lack of heat efficiency. And folks, we ought to take that to heart. And as soon as it snows, wherever the fuck you're at, go out and see if the snow is melting, then you're losing all your heat. The house needs to be warm. Musicians cannot play properly when they're cold. Aaron lives in Canada, so it gets really cold there in the winter. And as I am English, to me, it's really freezing. Well, it was pretty fucking cold in England when I was there, too. He took on board your views on why insulation is important, and thankfully he has a good sense of humor. That may have helped. He told me to listen to your broadcast too, and although I was rather concerned that maybe he would not find the funny side, he did, smiley face. By the way, the basement still needs doing up, but that's a project for another day. You, sir, are a genius, and thank you again. Kind regards, Lizzie from England, parentheses, going back to Canada soon and hoping to be cozy and warm. Well, there you go.
I want to issue an apology if you hear noise in the background. The lady with the lawnmower has a thing she's driving around to collect the leaves, it appears.
No, what the? I was about to say the lady with the lawnmower is goddamn freezing cold fucking weather.
No, she's driving some gimmick around collecting all the leaves. What the fuck?
Collecting.
Get a fucking gardener. What the fuck?
Well, why don't she just mulch the leaves?
I don't know why she does anything she does.
Well, you'd have a lot of fucking leaves if you just gathered them all up. We just chop them up and leave them lay there. It's good for the grass eventually. I can see you give a shit about my fucking botanical tips. All right. Anyway, you know what? With this freezing cold weather, you know what another problem I've got is, Brian?
I don't.
Pain and inflammation, baby. I have a problem with pain and inflammation, and I can't find stand-back powders anymore. Dusty used to sell them in the 70s, so I have found another way that my old, decrepit, aging, creaking, cranky physique can somehow motivate me and mobilize me through another day semi-pain-free. And that is with the product that we talked about a number of weeks ago, Omax CryoFreeze. And you have become an addict. You're mainlining this shit now. You know you are.
I have to admit, I was a little skeptical of this and of the whole CBD thing. If it said THC, I would say, okay, I get it. I know what that would do. But I was like, what is this CBD stuff? So I tried it. I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's a placebo effect or something. And I have to say, this shit has really worked for me. I have a shoulder that sometimes bothers me while I sleep because of just years of playing baseball and throwing too many pitches. My shoulder every now and then, sleeping is where I feel it. I put this stuff on and I've had no problem. I put this stuff on my knees after playing basketball and I could bounce back the next day. I wouldn't say this. I was ready to say, Jim, you handle these spots because I don't believe in this. This shit has worked for me. And I have to say I believe in this. This stuff's great.
Well, and imagine if you felt like I do. Yokozuna sat on my head. I took a bump off a scaffold. I'm missing an ACL. I've got fucking calcium deposit on my foot where Nikolai Volkov put it back in fucking position manually.
What? I don't know that story.
Oh, when I jumped out of the ring in the high heels when I was dressed like a woman and hit Ricky Morton over the head with a purse with a brick in it. But that's another story. Anyway, the fucking point dislocated the goddamn ball of my foot. Anyway, it's a CBD thing, but it's triple action. It blocks pain receptors, reduces inflammation, and improves muscle and joint flexibility. Basically, it looks like roll-on deodorant, and you roll it on, and within about 10 minutes, you feel the menthol thing, and it cools you down. And it lasts especially so you can sleep better. And it works on my shit too, although I wish they'd modify it for me and just make a gallon jug of it so I could just pour it in a bath. But otherwise than that, if you are if you're older or if you're just young and you're sore from shit, athletes use it because it treats sore muscles and it's pain relief and it's a soothing sensation. So anyway, Omax CryoFreeze, you can save money. If you're looking to relieve your muscle and joint pain within 15 minutes and need a natural, powerful solution that's tested and works, CryoFreeze Pain Relief Roll-On Quick Absorbing Scientifically Backed Formula provides pain relief instantly. And if you go to Omax Health, O-M-A-X, health.com, and use the promo code DRIVE, that's right, don't do JCE, because that's the JCE, the JC Experience Show. Do DRIVE as your promo code. We got so many promo codes because we save all of our cult members money. Anyway, omaxhealth.com, enter code DRIVE, and you get 20% off the CryoFreeze and anything else on the site. So don't let muscle soreness continue to be an excuse for not living an active lifestyle, or like me, just leaving you sitting on the couch instead of standing up and walking to the refrigerator to make you a sandwich and some white fudge-covered Oreos like you really want, but your knees are too sore to get up. Use this shit and you can have that sandwich, and you can have those Oreos. Folks, omaxhealth.com, promo code DRIVE.
Well, speaking of the drive and the drive-through, Jim, we have some questions that
Are we still doing a show?
Apparently, we've been going for a while
fuck?
now. Well, a lot of popular topics this week. I'm going to read you this email. This will cover a lot of different questions that have been sent in over the last couple of days. This was sent in to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Painmaker Chris Jericho, although I'm doubting this is really him. Jim, I want to know your thoughts on the WWE putting together a fairly decent show for SmackDown with the travel issues from Saudi Arabia. I thought the NXT talent did well. I loved the Bryan versus Cole match. But what did you think? And what rating did you give it out of 10? And of course, Jim, I do want to mention, someone asked me on Twitter the other night, is Jim watching SmackDown? And I assumed, no, don't expect a review of this. Jim's not watching. But from what I understand, you did see at least some of it.
Well, I watched it because once I heard about all those issues and the travel problems, I said, holy shit, what are they going to do? It's curiosity. I'm sure I haven't heard a rating, but I'm sure that it probably affected the number in some kind of way just from people hearing the news and going, oh shit, let's see what they're going to do. So yes, I watched it, and fairly decent doesn't even begin to describe it. I thought it was fucking great. It's exactly what they needed to do. And of course, it took a crisis to get it there. And I don't know if they would have done this if they actually had sat out and planned it. And so it could have obviously been done. It could have been done better in NXT Invasion just because there could have been some SmackDown people there to invade, right? I mean, if they were going to do it on purpose, but to take advantage of this situation, it was perfect. Because in actuality, a lot of the SmackDown guys weren't there, and they can blame the travel problems and say, if we'd have had our full crew, but they got fucking smoked by the NXT guys, and that's how you make stars. You have them, I think we've been saying that here on the program for about the last 2 months. You make stars by having them beat people that the fans already view as stars. It did not hurt Daniel Bryan's standing in the community one iota to do a job on national TV for Adam Cole. Not at this point in his career. I think you will agree with me in this. He has all the ability in the world and all the talent in the world, and we've always praised him. But right now, he's as over as he's ever going to get. Is he not?
Adam Cole?
No, Daniel Bryan.
He's as over as he's ever.
He's as over. I mean, you can't just hurt him by beating him once on television. That's not going to destroy it. Yeah, and it's not like he's going to suddenly make a run and become Steve Austin level either from this point in his career forward. He's over, and he's established, and he's as over as he's going to get. He's not suddenly going to get hot and run the company on his back over the next 5 years, but Adam Cole might. See, that's the thing. It's not you're not putting these guys out to pasture and putting a bullet in a fucking horse's head by beating a star with a new guy when it's done like that, when it's competitive, when both guys are that talented, and when it's also when you've reached Daniel Bryan's level, it's not going to hurt you. It wasn't going to hurt him to do that job, but it would have hurt Adam Cole if he'd have beat him at that point in time, would it not?
It would have hurt him significantly, I think.
Yes. So they could have done this any time, whether the crew was stuck in Saudi Arabia or not, but at least they pulled the trigger on it because we're going to figure out how to do this national television show. And the same thing with all the NXT talent that was exposed there. All of a sudden, they've gone from a WWE network show to Fox network television in fucking less than 3 months. And that's what I'm talking about in this wrestling war. That's one of the tools that Vince McMahon has. Not only does he have a massive roster and he's got guys ready to go if guys go down on a show and et cetera, and sure, they could do a better job creatively, but the infrastructure at this point of the WWE is so hard to beat. And also, Triple H was there. He was. Somebody had said something to the effect of, Vince signed off on it, but somebody had said something to the effect of, well, Bruce Pritchard's running the show now. No, fucking Triple H is there and he loves NXT and that's his show and he's taking this opportunity to get these guys over.
And by the way, I think Vince was there actually.
Well, but by the time he got back from Saudi Arabia, at least Triple H had some time to fucking think about what the fuck to do, right? So, anyway, I'm just saying all the stars aligned for the NXT guys to go out, and all of it was good. And Heyman's promo, because that's at the start reminded me of the old days, like that famous Knoxville TV show from '72 that's still around, with Ron Wright arguing with the referee and the announcer, and Lawler and Jim White wrestling Tommy Gilbert for the rest of the hour. There was a snowstorm and guys didn't show up. It used to happen on studio wrestling shows sometimes. And in Memphis, especially because it was live, you'd have guys go out and talk until so-and-so gets his boots tied. We'll send so-and-so out. When you see him, shut up. And that was your instruction. And Heyman's a perfect guy for that. He killed 20 minutes with some tape and Brock standing there. And I understand that was because the plane to get some of the people there literally landed, and they had a police escort, but landed like 5 minutes before airtime. So they probably told Heyman, you might have to go for 30 minutes. And I bet they gave him the Iggy when he could get out of it. But, that was a great promo by Heyman, and then all the NXT talent was exposed in the right light. I thought it was a beautiful show. And once again, a guy like Daniel Bryan is a pro and knows what's expected of him, and wanted to get the new guy over deep down in his heart, which is especially why the match was so good.
I didn't get to see the whole show because me and Suzanne were catching up that night on Billions, but I tuned in towards, I guess, in the middle of the second hour. And the only thing I didn't like was, after all these weeks of us reviewing NXT, at the end of the night, Paul Levesque in the ring doing his promo about his team and his army. And there we see the women who are about to do battle against each other in war games just standing next to each other. Guys who hate each other on the other show just standing there with each other. That was the only thing I didn't like, was just the whole idea that we just saw all these women, let's use them as the example, brawl with each other. This giant brawl on NXT leading to the war games, and now they just all standing next to each other, no problem.
And actually, to be honest with you, because the fucking DVR cut off right at whatever time, that's the thing that I basically missed. I saw the finish of the main event, and that's pretty much it for the show. So I may not have even noticed because I don't know these people well enough. But anyway, and I will say this. The people with Adam Cole's entrance, the people in the building were with the Boom, right? So they knew him. But I will say this, that to be honest, probably an extra 1.5 people saw those guys and girls from NXT in the ring there that had not seen them before on television because of the difference in the viewing fucking audiences. And a lot of people can't watch every goddamn wrestling program on the air. So I guess on the spur of the moment, they decided, well, we'll have our interleague, our inside the league rivalries, but when it's outside, NXT, we're going to be all for one or whatever the fuck, and that's the way they're going to frame it. But it was getting those people in front of a whole new audience, and they did it well.
Was there anything else on the show that stood out to you? I saw the Keith Lee and Matt Riddle chasing Sami Zayn. I know there's a beatdown backstage with Bianca Belair. Anything else stand out to you?
Yeah, it was a little silly but Generico did a good fucking job of being a Weasley heel. And they chased him and beat him up, and that was a little silly. But I'm trying to think, God damn it, what were the other matches? Obviously Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson stood out to me because that was the best. That was actually the best wrestling match that I've seen on television from NXT, AEW, or anybody else in the last month or so. I just loved that match start to finish. That was two pros that know what the fuck they're doing. It was the porridge. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. It was just right.
And another thing, it's one of those matches that when I saw on the screen the image of the two of them, I was like, this interests me. This is an interesting match I'd like to watch. So and
Rhea Ripley got over real strong earlier in the night.
That was the thing at the end. Rhea Ripley standing there, Bianca Belair's a couple feet away, and it's like I just saw these girls and everyone else brawl. Shayna Baszler just standing there. So that's the only thing that bothered me. But I guess we should also just say A lot of questions have come in about the situation with Saudi Arabia, but we're going to hold off until some more information is public to talk about that, correct?
Yeah, well, we're going to hold off until we actually know what the fuck we're talking about. Imagine that. And somebody put that out on Twitter. Twitter. Hashtag Cornette didn't mention anything until he knows what he's talking about. We have our web of informants around the world. Mason Krieger is probably flying over now in an Air Force plane, flying over Saudi Arabia, trying to gather information via satellite and high-powered telephoto lens. But yeah, we're seeing how all this develops. But it does not make sense, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of it does not make sense. And obviously, we know that there are more than mechanical troubles that led to a lot of people just going to a hotel and being ensconced there for a full day, especially if you're the guest of the ruler of the country and you want to go home. You think that motherfucker can find you a plane?
Like I said, more information to come this week on The Experience, more than likely. But we'll see what happens with some of this, and our sources are certainly saying a lot of things, so we'll see.
A lot of people saying it.
Jim, our next question was sent in via email, thecornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Aaron.
By the way, just back the fuck up a second. Bruce Pritchard looked at me like I had turds in my mouth because I would not go to Kuwait in 1997. I've told that story, but for the younger listeners, the newer audience out there, it was fucking late winter, early spring of 97. I don't know, it was always cold in Connecticut. And they were going to Kuwait and talking about doing television there and talking about taking the creative team. And Bruce Pritchard comes in one day and says, "What do you have? Do you have a passport, or is your passport up to date?" And I did not have a passport for this very reason. And I said, no, he made me go get one, but I never used it. But anyway, he said, "Well, we may be going to Germany and Kuwait." I said, "Germany is doubtful and Kuwait is not going to fucking happen." I said, "Let me know if this is a deal breaker, because I have to sign a lease on my house up here or go back to my home in Tennessee." And he came back later on and said, "It's not a deal breaker if you don't go to Kuwait." And then he didn't go to Kuwait either. Whatever.
What was your biggest fear would happen? They would hold you captive in Kuwait?
The same fucking thing is why we gave our notice and left before the Von Erichs went to Israel in 1985. Because we were, at that time, World Class Wrestling was the hottest television show in fucking Israel. And it was on a network there. And that's why the Von Erichs are still names and, recognized there. And I said I can see the fucking headlines. Noted terrorist group, whoever the fuck was a terrorist group in Israel in 1985, kidnaps American heel manager, throws him in closet and pisses on him. Fuck you. I was not going to the Middle East then. I wouldn't go to the Middle East now. Everybody's debated on, well, I can't believe so-and-so goes. I can't believe so-and-so goes. I don't know why anybody's fucking going. If you leave, the United States is fucked up, yes. We know this. I mean, look who's president. And there's a lot of fucked up things in the country. But you have a reasonable assertion, a reasonable assumption, I should say. You have a somewhat confidence that even if you're a minority in a poor neighborhood, you're going to be targeted by the cops, which obviously does happen on a regular basis. Nobody's going to fucking cut your fucking head off. If you're convicted, you're going to jail. Nobody's cutting your fucking appendages off. Nobody's going to stone you to death, set fire to you. They still do some fucking biblical shit over there, and I don't want to be a fucking part of it for spitting on the sidewalk. I'll be over here. So I don't know why anybody goes to fucking Saudi Arabia or anywhere else that's got all them issues over there. They cut the fucking Khashoggi's head off because he said bad shit about him. What do you think they might do to somebody with a company that they're spending fucking hundreds of millions of dollars with if things go sideways? I'll be open, yeah.
Our next question, Jim, sent in via email to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Aaron Terry. Please give us your thoughts on Lance Storm being hired by the WWE as a producer.
I think it's tremendous. I saw that recently. I figured that's what was gonna happen because I saw that Lance had closed his school down after the last class that he did earlier this year, and I think it's probably that he did it right actually. He retired early off the road because he's smart and takes care of his shit, and was able to do his own thing and be home for, his kids and dogs and wife and family and the whole 9 yards. And now that, it's just him and his wife, I guess kids are grown. He's decided to take a job doing what he likes and is still in shape to do. And which is training and or producing. He can work with the younger guys, and they can listen to him because he knows their trials and tribulations, but still he's old enough and experienced enough to try to counsel them on how not to be stupid, which is a very important part of this. So and he'll be tremendous. That's why it was great when we were able to bring Lance in 2012 to Ring of Honor to do I think it was a 3-match series with Mike Bennett. Because obviously, and Mike, good God, deserves so much more than what he's gotten. As a talent, he so much potential at that time, and still has so much talent. But Lance was able to. That's what we were doing at that time. We were bringing some of those guys like Rhino, and Lance Storm and Matt Hardy, and some of those guys that were still of the generation, but had experience around the world and worked with everybody and could slow the guys down and focus them. And teach them timing and have matches with them on the pay-per-views or the big shows that meant something. And at the same time was an on-the-job learning experience. And Mike got so much out of that series with Lance. So I think that's fantastic. I mean, and Lance is so low-key. I'm sure he can put up with, with people. So did I say that nicely enough?
Our next question, sent in the cornydrive-thru@gmail.com from Chris Woodard. And his question is, Jim, with the recent rise in mouthguard use by wrestlers in the ring, how does this affect calling a match, playing to the crowd and look on camera? I don't know why that says it. I guess, how does the mouthguard affect calling a match?
Well, I don't know, because I've never either had a mouth guard in or worked with anybody that was wearing a mouth guard. But I imagine there might be an issue, although... See, here's the thing. A lot of guys already have the match down before they go out these days. I mean, for good or bad. So there may just be a few words that need to be spoke along the way. But also, here's another thing. If the guy's wearing the mouth guard, may not be the guy calling the fucking match. Another thing is that I think it enhances if you've got an MMA background or an MMA gimmick or are working that style, then I think it's good. If you're just wearing a fucking mouth guard, just like every goddamn schlub started wearing kick pads like they were fucking, a goddamn Jeet Kune Do expert or whatever the fuck. There's a goddamn exotic martial arts reference. Then it looks stupid. If you're just some Joe Schmo from fucking Cleveland, but you're wearing a mouth guard in a pro wrestling match, it just looks stupid. If it fits your presentation. And those guys look fucking mean with the mouth guards, especially if they're custom mouth guards. Guys that are fired up on the fucking UFC or in a cage or whatever. So it just depends, as almost everything does, on whether it looks right and whether it fits who you're supposed to be.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in via Twitter using the hashtag #CornyDriveThru from Dewey Rodriguez. Hey, Jim.
Dooley Rodriguez?
Dewey.
I thought you meant Dooley. Dooley never had a dollar. Dooley skipping up the holler. Dooley.
Norm Dooley?
No, that actually was an old recording by the bluegrass group that played the Darling Brothers on the Andy Griffith Show of the folk song Dooley. Dooley skipping up the holler. Dooley never had a dollar. Dooley. All right, anyway.
Well, here's Dewey's question. Hey, Jim, wanted to get your thought on... Hey, Jim,
I just have one.
Hey, Jim, wanted to get your thoughts on Triple H. Not the COO Triple H, but the performer Triple H. How do you rank him as a heel compared to the all-time great heels that have wrestled in the ring? For me, he is one of the best on the mic and in the ring.
Well, this will probably hurt his feelings. Dewey, I'm not talking about Triple H. No, you know, I said one time, and I stand by this, because everybody was talking about that Triple H was the top star in the business. Well, we kind of know why that happened, that he was positioned in that spot. And that doesn't mean that he wasn't a main event guy. And especially find somebody now with that body and that look and that ability to work and the fucking, I'll say the good things like Stewie Griffin compliment sandwich, dedication to training and ability to come back after the injuries and all that stuff. And for, the wonderful backstage maneuverings. I mean, he's set himself up quite well. And so now if that guy came along, he might be the biggest star in the business. But Triple H in the middle of Steve Austin and The Rock and The Undertaker and Mick Foley and John Cena, he was the guy that worked with the guy that drew the money, was Triple H. I don't think he's one of the best promos, because then that takes into account Ric Flair and Terry Funk and, my God, every other great promo of the wrestling business. And no. But now, as you've looked at what he's done over the past 25 years, he's done quite well for himself, but I don't place him as an all-time great in any performing capacity as a wrestler, whether in ring with matches or on promos or whatever the case. But he's obviously outperformed pretty much every other wrestler in history with his overall career path.
Did Chris Candido ever talk to you about when he first went to the WWF? And I think it would have been WrestleMania. Him and Tammy were brought in, and Triple H was brought in too, because they had just signed him. And how Triple H was telling them at the time, he was John Paul Levesque, how I'll do anything. I'm going to, be the top guy here. I'm going to do whatever it takes to run this place. Did you hear that story back then?
Well, yeah. I mean, he always also, look at how much money he's got right now. Why the fuck does anybody give a shit at that point? Because he's driven to run things. That's if you didn't have people that weren't driven to run things, you wouldn't have Republicans, which I guess might be. But but no, it was a 25-year plan. Son of a gun, worked out fine. Or 20. Well, it's been almost 25 years. But yeah, and that's why he ate that fucking mat for Warrior, also the Ultimate Warrior, and that 1 minute, yes, give me your finish, I'll pop right back up and then beat you flat, because Warrior was a piece of shit. And see that yes, he could get over strong, but he didn't have to get over that strong. It's just he could call it, and he didn't give a fuck about anybody else but himself, because he was a selfish prick.
But like that example, because you were there at the time and you were working, as a top executive there at the time. When that happens, what do you think? Because obviously Triple H had already issues with him and the clique and his attitude. At least, by some people in management that thought he had a bit of an issue. And then you have the Warrior who's coming in there and he's just, it is ridiculous. I'm going to kick out of your finish and then just destroy you. What do you think backstage when that's happening?
Well, I thought Warrior was a piece of shit and was always on the side of anybody that was counter to Warrior's best interest. I didn't think he should have been there in the first place, because of all the reasons why he shouldn't have been there in the first place. And I thought that Triple H from the start was a good young talent that was going to get better. He had a good body. You could already tell he could work. He was paying attention, blah, blah, blah. If he, whether he wanted to run the whole place, I didn't give a fuck. I knew if he wanted to be there for the rest of his life, God bless him. I knew I wasn't going to be there long fucking term, because I would have gone insane. The only problem I ever had with him was with the curtain call. And then I even went to him because they made him, well, all of us got together and said, how do we handle everything? Of course, Vince proceeded to not do anything to fucking Nash and Hall because they were leaving. And he didn't even fuck them on their WrestleMania payoff like he could have, because they were already gone. And I wish he would have, as some type of penalty for what they did. And he didn't do anything to Michaels because he was the champion. And that was Vince's fault too. Put your belt on that fucking egomaniac. You can't tell me just in goddamn gray hair that Shawn Michaels drew enough money to compensate for the money that any of three other top guys that he could have got behind and pushed at that point. I digress. So the only one they punished was Triple H. And he didn't win the King of the Ring as he was scheduled to. His push was stalled, and he was told to go around and apologize to everybody, which he should have done, and I was all with that, but I thought that Michael should have had done the same thing, or elsewise it was bullshit. So I even sat down with Triple H when he came to me to do the apology. I said, hey, you got in with your friends who could tolerate it, who could tolerate the heat because he couldn't do anything to the two that were leaving, and he's not going to do anything to the guy with the belt. So you're the one that gets punished, which should be a lesson in who you hang around with. As a matter of fact, it's what I told him, because they didn't give a fuck that you were going to get fucking buried. I said, and you did something wrong, but you're apologizing to everybody, and just lay low and keep working hard because your work is good and you look good, et cetera, and people will forget about it. And I thought that was good advice until not only did they not forget about it, but the fucking moron Russo actually a couple years later, 2 years or a year and a half or whatever it is putting the fucking video on Raw, bringing it back up for the people that weren't there in person. Fucking moron. And then Helmsley goes around and says, well, I apologize, but I didn't mean it. Well, if he didn't mean his apology for exposing the business in Madison Square Garden, if he didn't mean the apology he told all the boys, then that's when I pretty much didn't give a fuck about him as a person. And that's when, I will, as I've just done, recognize that he's talented and he's done a lot of major shit, but he was one of the guys that exposed the business in the Garden. He gave guys bullshit apologies. And so it's not like we would be personal friends and on our Christmas card lists.
All right, so let's look at it now a different way. So that's Triple H, the wrestler, Triple H, the young wrestler that you were around. All these years later, seeing NXT, and if everything goes according to what a lot of people think the plans are, eventually Triple H runs WWE with Stephanie after Vince is no longer in the picture. What you see from NXT, does it give you hope for Triple H's vision of wrestling?
Yes, because Triple H was a fan of old school wrestling. He just fell in with the cool kids in class at that time that were helping elevate him and did some stupid shit. And, and he's had to go along with Vince's vision of, well, it's entertainment and et cetera, but he was a fan of wrestling. And he was a fan of Ric Flair, and he was a fan of NWA title matches, and he's a fan of athletes. And he's not going to be obviously a sizist because there's small guys now on NXT and every other division, but the guys all have to look like athletes or have some type of gimmick that excuses that they not look like athletes, and they still have to be athletes even though they don't look like it. And he's having these guys, and they're highly trained. And by that, I'm not saying that every single one of them is the greatest psychological wrestler in the world and puts together the best match, but they certainly execute all the moves not only safely, but crisply and well. So they're highly trained in that aspect. So yes, and I don't see any of the stupid, goofy shit. I don't think Triple H has the fucking fondness for fart jokes and shit and white cotton panties and all Vince's other strange fucking fixations. I think he wants to present a somewhat serious product with moments of levity, like we may have seen with fucking Keith Lee and old bro chasing Generico around, but it's not stupid. And I don't think that, I think Triple H would throw his body in front of the company ever bringing in a bunch of these outlaw goofs and having a match with the Invisible Man. So yeah, I think they'll be better off.
Our next question, Jim, sent in via email to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Mark Cole. Recently, the network uploaded the 1988 Great American Bash from Greensboro, where Jim and the Midnight Express wrestled 3-on-2 in a bunkhouse match versus the Fantastics. A number of internet writers, whatever that means, praised Jim's work in the match, including saying Jim, quote, has been the superstar of the match, and, quote, this was the best in-ring cornet I have ever seen. Does Jim have any particular memories of this match?
Well, yes, not only because I was in it, but also because it's one of the bashes that were taped, and Jackie Crockett gave me a copy of the tape. And okay. This is an example of the internet writers, the trained eye versus the untrained eye. Everybody in the match was a better worker than I was. But the match was structured as a blow-off match on a big show to highlight the parts where I get in and get a little bit of heat on the Fantastics when my boys have stopped them, and then ultimately get my comeuppance at the finish and get, beat up and pinned by both of them. So it was a 20-something minute match, and it was a bunkhouse match. So, I mean, we were able to throw chairs around a little bit and do some of that stuff and choke with the gimmicks. But basically, it was a standard match that the manager would have in Tennessee or any of the Southern territories, where the baby faces shine and the heels get flummoxed and get bumped around. And each time that Bobby or Stan comes to me and sticks a hand out like to tag me, I jump off the apron of the ring, or I fucking climb up on the top rope and I make motions like, are you fucking screwy in the head? What's the matter with you? Don't touch me. I'm not getting in there. So then the baby faces get the people to chanting, that they want me, and I blow them off, and they wrestle some more, and they do some more exciting spots with the baby faces. Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers were tremendous. And then finally, after milking, I would never get in, then they stop good old fucking Tommy Rogers and beat him up a little bit. And as he's down selling, now they tag me in. And I come in and I think I drop an elbow on him, and I might have dropped a fist on him. And then I pick him up and I'm going to body slam him, right? And I go down to crotch him, and I strain. And you see on my face, I can't pick him up. And then I wave Bobby in behind me, and Bobby Eaton jumps in. And this was his spot. He suggested it, and it worked great. He reaches under me and through Tommy's legs, and both of us pick Tommy Rogers up and slam him, right? Then Bobby claps for me, and I hit the double bicep, and the people are throwing shit. And then whenever the Fantastics try to fire up, I jump back out. And after I take a few cheap shots, and then the boys get the heat on him, then finally they miss the rocket launcher or whatever. And oh my God, Bobby Fulton makes the comeback and jerks me in and fucking gives me a few shots, and they double clothesline me. Boom, 1, 2, 3. It was simple, nice little 20-minute match. And it told a story, and it was constantly milking for them to get a hold of me, which the whole program had been. In Greensboro is where at the Clash of Champions, I'd whipped Bobby Fulton with the belt after their debut there when we got disqualified for the U.S. tag title. And then I had done shit on television, and I'd interfered and done the straitjacket deal in the whole 9 yards. So finally they get even with me. So of course I'm the star of the match, but it was smoke and mirrors. But that's the idea. And that's what it was sold as. So I appreciate the compliments.
Our next question was sent in via email, thecornydrivethrough@gmail.com, from Chad Lee. One of the wrestlers that lit a passion for me years ago was Jake Roberts. I fell in love with snakes because of him. Do you have any stories of how the guys interacted with Damien backstage? Whose idea was the snake? How was Damien cared for on the road? Oh, boy.
Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Well, first of all, it was Vince's idea because, the British Bulldog had a dog and Coco Beware had the bird, and why not have the fucking snake? It was a goddamn whole zoo up there at that time. And because Jake's demeanor and the way that he talked and that evil, insidious laugh and the whole nine, he reminded you of a snake. And even when he was young and lean, his body, and he had that knee lift and the way he moved around and slithered around the ring. So that was a no-brainer. Fuck Damien. I've told the story about fucking, when they tried to handcuff me to the rope and to put Damien on me, and I'd seen it coming, and I'd fucking arranged for my escape from the handcuffs. But the thing is, one time Savio, when they brought Jake back in 96, right? I'm standing there at the entranceway at a Raw taping. And Savio, merry prankster he is, had gone into the fucking bag that they kept the snake in and had it around his shoulders and walked up behind me and put his arm around my shoulder, or what I thought was his arm, until I saw it was that fucking snake. I jumped. I threw one of the fucking light fixtures at him. It was like a $500 light fixture I found out later. I did not pay for it because fuck it. I tossed that at him. I went fucking berserk. I didn't want the thing anywhere around, and somebody was always trying. Bulldog would try to hook you and fucking force you into the goddamn room that the snake was in. You know, somebody was always playing around. I didn't want the thing anywhere around. But the one time that I traveled with the snake, as far as how was it handled backstage, me and Jake in my rental car, he asked for a ride from where was it, Dallas to Houston, somewhere in Texas. I think it was Dallas to Houston, after a TV taping for the next one. And I said, the snake has to go in the trunk. He said, I don't care. You know, he puts it in a big canvas bag. The bag he brought it out to the ring with was what he carried it in. And he fucking puts it in the trunk with the bags, right? And I'm like, okay, we drive 4 hours to fucking Houston. I love animals, but I could give a fuck about a snake. So I didn't check on it. If it had been Harley Quinn, she'd have been riding up front. Jake would have been in the trunk. But since it was a fucking snake. Anyway, we get there and we're checking in. And they've still got a bellhop at this, like the Intercontinental Hotel, Airport Hotel in Houston or whatever. A bellhop's still on duty. He's got a cart because Jake's got the big wrestler body bag and then another bag. And I've got a couple bags because I'm on the road. And he's got this snake bag. Well, as the bellhop is putting all the stuff on the cart, he gets the canvas snake bag. He doesn't know what's in it. And he sets it on top of one of the other bags. Then he turns his back to get something else out of the trunk. And that snake starts moving because it's been jostled. And the canvas bag falls off onto the fucking parking lot, onto the pavement. And the bellhop, oh, I'm sorry, sir, like he's dropped some of our valuable possessions. And he puts it back up and turns his back again. The same fucking thing happens. I said, fuck, I'm going in to check in. I just grabbed my bags and I carried them in. I said, I don't know when this guy's going to find out what he's handling, and I don't want to be there. And Jake and the fucking cart and the snake and the bellhop went on. But it made me very, very uncomfortable.
When I was at Sony, I worked with a guy. I'm not going to use his full name here because I don't know if he would want it out there, but let's just call him Jimmy.
You just got to call him Jimmy. Okay.
His name was Jimmy. And when I was at Sony,
Jimmy!
He worked across the street. I was at 550 Madison Avenue. He was across the street. We had extra offices we rented over there, and he ran the photo studio. And in the 1980s, he had been one of the animal wranglers for the WWF. He had been on the road with them during the wildest of the wild years.
Oh, my God.
And he told me that Jake was popular because no one at the airports wanted to go near the snake, so he would carry everyone's cocaine in a coffee canister that he would put in the bag with Damien, and Damien would wrap himself around the coffee canister. That way, they knew they can get the drugs from one town to another, and then as soon as you get off the plane, everyone will be like lined up waiting for Jake because he had everyone's gimmicks. So... And that's the nicest thing I've heard about his treatment of Damien on the road, quite frankly. But yeah, I got that firsthand from the person who was...
I don't know if I'd travel on the road with Jake if I was a human, much less an animal that had to be cared for.
How many snakes has he killed?
I know nothing. I was not around most of it. I was around it very briefly, and I don't have any knowledge of anything on a first-hand basis.
All right.
I would imagine with that schedule, you went through a few. That schedule would kill people, even if they were being cared for.
Our next question, Jim, sent in via email to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. I recently heard Jim Ross say that Vader's biggest problem in the WWF was he was older and his body was breaking down. He went on to say his body wouldn't have been able to handle the touring schedule if he was champion. Was Vader in that bad of shape at that point? What kind of injuries was he dealing with for JR to say his body was breaking down?
Well, his body was breaking down. As soon as he came in and he did that angle with Gorilla Monsoon where he Vader bombed Gorilla, which got over and made such an impact.
Fantastic angle, yeah.
Well, yeah, and then they suspended him so he could go have shoulder surgery. And I said, why did we just start this fucking guy last month? He's got to have surgery, right? And I never understood that. And when he came back, it never had the impact started lessening. I think Vince found new toys over a period of time. But also the shoulder surgery was worse. than they thought, so he was off longer. Then because it was longer, they rushed him back or kept browbeating him to come back, and he said he rushed back, and he probably did. And he had gained weight, and then there became the problems and the battles with, Leon and JR on behalf of Vince and his weight. But to say that he wouldn't have been able to handle the schedule as champion, no, I wouldn't have put the fucking belt on him for a year and a half straight and had him go out there and do 25 minutes every night like he may have done, 5 years earlier in Japan or whatever. But at the same time, no, when he was in WCW and in Japan, they weren't working nearly as the schedule that the WWF was at that time. But the point is, he could still go out and be Vader in 1996. They just Vince never got Leon, and Leon never got Vince. Leon was something of he would fixate on things, and he would beat him into the ground. And when you mentioned Leon's name to Vince, Vince would roll his eyes. And then Michaels didn't like to work with Leon because Leon was jerking him around because that was Leon's gimmick. And he was a real beast in a land of fucking, at that time, fucking real make-believe. But he could have gone out and held the belt for a fucking year and gone out and had Vader matches on the big shows and probably drawn some money. But Vince never wanted a strictly heel champion as long-term. And once that he got disenchanted, once that Michaels got him disenchanted with Leon, he didn't want him to be the champion. That was his plan until Shawn actually started working with Leon, and then Shawn changed that plan.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question. How much of Vader's problems in the WWF were his body breaking down versus Shawn Michaels not wanting to work with him?
Shawn Michaels breaking down and saying, "I'll get you fired if you pull my hair like that again, motherfucker." Well, no, the original plan was that they would do the disputed decision that they did at SummerSlam, where they kept restarting the match and blah, 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 which that was a pretty good match. That was the best Vader match in the WWF, even if you take into account Michaels' fucking bitch fit in the middle of it, because he was still being Vader. And then Vader was going to fuck him at Survivor Series and then go back and defend it and drop it at the Alamo Dome in January at the Royal Rumble in San Antonio, Shawn's hometown, which was the reason why they brought Jose in to be Shawn's trainer, so he would be able to get the Eye of the Tiger back, the man who originally broke him in. And why they were doing the whole thing was because San Antonio was Shawn Michaels' hometown, and so they had an Alamo Dome. They needed to sell 40,000 tickets, so they wanted the big goddamn champion wins belt back in his hometown with his, to get revenge for his mentor or whatever the fuck. But it never came about because after SummerSlam and a couple weeks on the road, Shawn Michaels was not wanting to work with Vader anymore.
We have time for a couple more questions, Jim.
We do?
This one was sent in.
You do?
This one was sent in the cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Zach Brooks. This week on AEW, Sammy Guevara had a match with Hangman Page, and about 2 minutes into the match, Guevara had two super obvious welts across his back and arm, obviously caused by the ring ropes, as he had hit them about 3 times already. I also saw it on Hangman's arms. As far as I can remember, I've never really seen this. I know it happens to guys who are green and are hitting the ropes for the first time. Why do you think guys like Sammy and Page would have welts like that and have them that early in a match? Ring rust? Shitty ropes? I'm curious.
Well, no, it ain't ring rust. And a part of it is shitty ropes. Here's the thing. In the WWE, they have real ropes, and that's why the ropes have no fucking tension. That's why you can tie people up in them, which that's the only thing that's good for. But it's why they're so wiggly. And every time I tried to take a bump out of that ring, I got hurt because they give you no support. And I hate real ropes. Cables are what AEW and WCW and Ring of Honor and almost every other promotion in the world uses, NWA, etc. If you get the right kind of cables, have the right kind of tension, and have them covered and wrapped in the right way, it doesn't hurt you. If you have wrong of any of those, it can be like hitting a goddamn giant cheese grater or a brick wall. It just depends. The ring in Roanoke for Crockett had cables. but they had cables that were always wound so tight for whatever fucking reason, because all these buildings had different rings where they went every 2 or 3 weeks. They had their own rings. The goddamn things were so tight, if you hit them, you couldn't bow them out. It was like hitting the fucking wall. And they had the garden hose coverings that weren't fastened down at the turnbuckles, so they would spin around. So if you stood up, it would roll. The garden hose around the cable would roll under your foot. It was fucking shits. If you don't have enough tension, but the ropes are too small, they're not covered with hose or wrapping that is big enough, then if you try to take a bump out of them, they can fucking throw you upside down and you know, sometimes fuck you up that kind of way. You have to have the right amount of tension. And I always, in the Smoky Mountain ring, we used cables. We not only got the right amount of tension, but also we had an extra thick hose that covered it. And then a number of layers of duct tape were wrapped around our yellow tape because we had yellow ropes. So the ropes were about as big around as a silver dollar. And I found that when you hit those, they don't leave bruises and they don't hurt as bad because they have the proper amount of give, and they're not like a little... Imagine hitting a fucking metal rod about 1/4 of an inch around, or hitting a nice cushioned 1-inch diameter fucking garden hose with tape. You see the fucking difference. But so it wasn't just because they were... Or they could have done some kind of move where one guy fucking got hung up on the top rope under his arm. And Sammy Guevara is also painfully fucking pale. He's almost translucent. So and it depends on how easy you bruise. Remember a job guy called Tony Zane on 80s Atlanta TV?
Yeah.
He was from, Rome, Georgia, along with Arn Anderson, the incomparable Marty Lundy. And Tony we affectionately called him the human bruise. Because not only did he not have a tan, he was very pale, and he was also quite pudgy. He was a portly young man. But he also, you could just fucking give him a noogie like that, and he would bruise. It just, some people bruise. They have an iron deficiency. I don't know what the fuck, right? Some people bruise. And goddamn, if he did a taping where he worked on the Saturday show and the Sunday show, by the end of the day, he would look like he'd been run over by a car. He had bruises everywhere. The human bruise, Tony Zane. So it just depends. But that's not necessarily an example of greenness in the ring.
Our final question for this week's drive-thru was sent in to cornydrivethru@gmail.com from Jeff Pollard. I have heard everyone's opinion on this but yours. Why do you think Vince McMahon never allowed Randy Savage to return to the WWE when he took back so many who left for other companies and even badmouthed Vince at times?
Hey, well, this is a horrible question to end on because I can't tell you. Because James Dixon, who wrote several wonderful books on Titan Sports and the 90s era, has made a pretty decent case for what I thought may have been just hearsay and falderall at one point. But I have no firsthand knowledge of whatever. And there's so many things that I can slander people for that they actually did. I don't know. And he would never tell anybody, Vince, and still has not necessarily told anybody that's talking about it. So I don't know, but draw your own conclusions. The one guy, I mean, of all the other things that all these people have done, but the only unforgivable one was the Macho Man. And I don't know whether a Slim Jim sponsorship, no matter how lucrative, would have instigated that kind of...
That's what I was told in 1995 by what I would consider reputable sources. I was told in 95 there was serious heat before people knew there was heat, because after Randy left, there wasn't heat. But after Slim Jim left, because they tried to go Bam Bam Bigelow after Randy left, and Slim Jim was not happy.
Oh, I'm not saying there wasn't heat. I'm just saying, I don't know whether that alone for the following 20 years would have been. It's alleged that possibly some things were found out about in a retroactive fashion after that date that caused Vince to be even more perplexed with Mr. Savage.
How lucrative, if you know, was the Slim Jim deal for the WWF?
Oh, I'm sure there was $1 million involved. I mean, that ain't fucking chump change. But now in this environment and their finances these days, and even the finances when Randy was still alive would not, to me, have precluded. You could make more money if it was just all about the Slim Jim thing and it wasn't personal and just a betrayal of whether it be business or personal or whatever. He could have made more money off Randy Savage than he lost on the Slim Jims the last 5 years Randy was alive, if he'd wanted to.
Well, until next time on the drive-thru, we want to remind you can listen to the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts this Friday. I got to get used to that. Wherever it is that you find your favorite podcast, I promise it's going to be an action-packed episode this Friday. Check that out. And of course, you could download it or stream it wherever you find your favorite podcast, or go to the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel, tinyurl.com/official corny YouTube, or just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. And thank you to everyone who's been watching the videos, sharing the videos, commenting on the videos, and especially subscribing to the channel. We really, really do appreciate it. There's lots of clips up there, lots of full episodes, as well as omnibus collections. So please subscribe today and check it out. And don't forget, the Arcadian Vanguard video channel has the Jim Cornette archives, so check those out as well. You can follow Jim on Twitter at the Jim Cornette. You can follow me on Twitter at Great Brian Last. You can hear me on the 605 Super Podcast at 605pod.com, or available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcasts. Jim, what's going on today with Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornette.com? I'm sure you've cleared out all your orders. You're ready for a fresh week of getting in new orders and running to the post office. What's going on?
Well, you've just told the people. You've just told them. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm filling orders I'm shipping shit as swiftly as shit can be shipped to all points around the North American continent and the world at jimcornette.com at Cornette's Collectibles. Presents for the entire family, the wrestling fan in the family or your close social circle, available starting at $9 each for the Wrestling Gold 10 Hours of Classic Wrestling. We've got $10 burger towels. We've got $10 autograph pictures, $10 Cult of Cornette membership certificates, the $15 Houston Wrestling Spectacular DVD, including Dusty Rhodes, Bruiser Brody, Nick Bockwinkel, and Wild Bull Curry versus Johnny Valentine, and our entire array of T-shirts, books, restraining orders, so much more. Shipping shit swiftly is our motto for the holidays. Get your orders in early. We're expecting an all-time record-breaking crowd.
Once again, jimcornette.com for Cornette's Collectibles. And don't forget, if you need to sue, call Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084, or visit newlawoffice.com. But until this Friday on The Experience, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!